so let's take a look at the sample paper that was given out in 2019-2020. Here we go. Bing, section A. So if you can't get a copy of this, just pause the screen and you can see the questions as we go. But anyway, question 16. According to the recent report in the Irish Independent, 1 in 4 children and 3 out of 4 adults in Ireland are overweight or obese. Diabetes, heart disease, we all know that. BMI, Grant. He's given us a calculation for BMI. He says, open this program on your device, enter your examination number, don't forget to do that. And then he's got a bit of stuff here. And he gets us to run it. So he says, if we enter the weight 90, we should get this. So I always recommend, click to run. So I'll just give it a save name. There you go. Enter 90 as he suggested. Oops. And sure enough, I get the answer that he showed. So, grand, everything's working. Part 1. Modify the program to do the following. Insert a comment to say read weight in the appropriate location to show where the weight is input. So insert a comment. Okay, no problem. So here's my comment. Part 1. Read weight. That's where it's reading the weight. Just double checking. Insert a comment to read weight in the appropriate location. Yeah, nice, easy peasy. Currently it's modified that the height is hard coded to 180. Hard coded means that it's just plugged in as 180, which sure enough it is there. Modified so that it enters a value for height. The value should be converted to an integer. So now it'll end up looking like this when it's output. So in order to do that, we're going to need to just steal this idea that we had up with weight. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy paste all of this. I'm going to delete that 180 and I'm going to say in centimeters. So enter height in centimeters. And then down here, print BMI. Now it does say it wants enter weight. Well, enter weight will happen, enter height. Okay, let's just test it out then. So run it. We put 90, we put 180, and sure enough, we get the same answer. So that is looking good. Let's have a look at part 3 then. Oh, just a piece of advice. Always put in a little lead for the exam. I can get rid of the centimeters now, but a little lead for the examiner when they're correcting it. It's make the examiner's life easy. That's your one job. Right, down here, by using the function round or otherwise, right, but we'll use round, modify the program so the value of the BMI is rounded to 1 decimal place. Okay, so round is on your cheat sheet that you get with the exam, or your reference guide, sorry. But I'm just going to say round all of this stuff, right, so this whole thing. So I put it in a big bracket. But I'm going to say that to 1 decimal place. So I'm going to have to put a bracket on the outside and a bracket here. So it's going to round all of this calculation to 1 decimal place. So let's just run it. 90, 180, 27.8. And sure enough, I've got it looking the same. If I wanted 2 decimal places, I'd change that 1 to a 2 and so on. Another way you could have tackled that instead, just so you're aware, is you could have done on the next line, you could have said BMI equals BMI, or round BMI to 1 decimal place. So you could have done it, oh sorry, MBI I put there, but BMI, you could have done it in the second instance like that as well. Would have been the same. Now just to show though, if I run this now, I'd say it's going to give you some weird error. Let's just try it out. Oh, no, it's fine. Okay. I suppose we're rounding something that's already rounded to 1 decimal place. It's not doing any harm, but just another way you could have tackled it. Anyway, part 4. Oh, yeah, same thing again. Let's always mark in where we did something. So there's my part 3. Part 4. By using the POW, or otherwise replace the expression height by height with an alternative but equivalent implementation. Okay. I don't really know what he meant by with other. Well, actually, I think I do. With otherwise, he might have just wanted you to do to the power of 2, like, so get rid of that height, so height squared. That's probably his otherwise, but he specifically asked for the POW function. So we're going to say POW height comma 2. Okay, and bear in mind you can find this on the reference guide that they give you. So let's just try run this and see what happens. 90, 180, and sure enough, I'm still getting the correct answer. Okay, so that's looking pretty good for part 4. So on the same line, I can put part 4. Do you mean 3 and 4 there? Because I've got it done. You don't need to separate them up into separate parts or anything crazy like that. Okay, last bit, part 5, sorry, here is going to look to incorporate the following function before the user enters any data. So you'd have to obviously write this yourself, but I'm going to copy paste here. And I'm going to put a function at the very top. So Bing, welcome to my BMI calculator. So I want to do this before I enter any data. So here, I'm going to tell it to run the function. So I say display intro, open bracket, close bracket, display intro. And now I run it. Bing, welcome to my BMI calculator, 90, 180, and everything's still working. So this is how we run a function, and this is how we define a function. The definition should always be before you run it, or else it'll give you an error. So then with part 6, a BMI number alone might not mean much to the average person. So there's 4 categories that he gives us here, and then he gives us a table to test all of it. That's great. So he tells us from 18.5 to 24.9. Now, because he's rounded, we can actually use these exact values, but just, yeah, beware of reading ranges. So I'm going to need to do a bunch of if-else statements here to get the different categories. So here's my categories. I'm just going to copy-paste them, and I'm going to have them down here. So this is just a reference for me. Obviously, you'll have a piece of paper in front of you. But I'm going to say if BMI is less than 18.5, then I want it to print, and let's just see how he wants it done out. So we're doing the same. He wants us just to print the actual reference. So in this case, I'm just going to print underweight and close. There we go. There's the first one done. Elif, the BMI is from 18.5. So BMI is greater than or equal to 18.5, and BMI is less than 24.9, or actually he says to 24.9, so it's less than or equal to 24.9. I'm going to get to print the next statement, which is normal. I'm just going to hashtag out these 2 lines here for a moment. I'm going to get rid of this. No harm in testing it now. You could have tested it as well previously, but let's just test it. So we're going to test it for 50 and 165. So I'm going to run this 18.5. So there we go. 15, 165. And sure enough, I've got it saying it's underweight. Now, my BMI looks like it doesn't match theirs. So I'm going to just check that now. So just a quick check, and oh, sorry, 50, not 15. Oops, typo. So I'll just run it again just to check that my numbers are fine. 50 and 165, and there we go, 18.4. His says 18.3. Now I'm going to say that I think mine's right, having done this a few times. I'm just going to guess that that was a typo, but let's just go through the rest anyway. So I've got these guys. I'm going to do another elif, so I'll just copy paste this. Now, most common mistake I see students doing here is they go and, but they forget to put in this BMI thing. They just go like that. So make sure you're saying if it's greater than and if BMI is less than. So if it's from 25, so greater than or equal to 25 to 29.9. And that's going to say overweight. And then finally, you can do it as an else if you like. Or you can put another elif statement, that's fine. I'm going to say else print obese. There we go. And I'll get rid of this last one. So now I'm going to test my other 2 values. So in here I had 70, 170. So let's just test that, 70, 170. And I got 24.2, which also matches. 90 and 180, so test them all. Always test all of them. It'd be really embarrassing to get this far and then get it wrong. 27.8, that's great. And 90 and 170. Obese at 31.1, great. That's it for section A. Make sure to save your file. As well, I've labeled this 1, 2, 3. I didn't label part 4, or part 5, so I'd go here and go hashtag part 5. You can put as many hashtags you like as comments, do you know what I mean, to help out. And then down here, hashtag part 6, and you can just put that above. Okay, let's have a look at the question 16b part. So you have to open a new file. Always remember that if they're separate files, don't be saving them all into one file. So here's our big file here. I'm not even gonna, well, just, you know what, he tends to explain stuff, so have a read. The program creates 2 empty lists, height and weight. So there is our 2 empty lists. And it uses a for loop to populate both lists with 10 random values. So it counts, counts to range 10, and it puts in a random integer between 150 and 210, and a random integer between 50 and 130. modify the program to do the following. Display the contents of both lists along with the labels, heights and weights. It should look something like this. Now bear in mind, because it's random, it won't look the exact same, but it should end up looking like that. So to display the lists, you even put a little thing there first. I'm going to say print heights, and I'm going to say dink, comma, and then I say heights. And I'm going to repeat the same, print weights, oopsie doodle. And then I'm going to say weights. Let's just have a little run of this. Oh, give it a save file. There we go. File save name. Cool. Bing. Just check. Yeah, that looks great. That's the end of my part 1. Again, label it. Although it'd be pretty obvious he already put where to put it. Currently, the program generates 10 pairs. Modify the program set to generate a variable number entered by the user. So this time it's 10 here for this guy. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to ask it before we run the loop to input whatever number they want. So I'm going to say the choice for the user is an int input, and I'll just check what he wanted me to say. He wanted me to say enter a number for pair of values you wish to generate. Well, that's a lot to say, so I'm going to copy paste that. So I've done that now. Now I'm just going to run it and see what, oh yeah, well I need to tell this to be choice. So I'm going to say run this. I'd like to generate 7 please, and just check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Awesome. It's generated 7 of both. So there's my part 2, and I label it accordingly. Back here. Part 3. Extend the program to create and generate using a separate loop, a third list called BMI values. So for each element in this, it should be calculated, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you may wish to use code A to calculate the BMI, right? So it should be, what it wants to do here is it should be calculating a BMI value. So for example here, it should be taking the 199 height and the 70 weight and calculating the BMI value for them combined. So we don't want this to just randomly be generating BMIs. So I'm just going to go back to my previous one, and I'm going to copy paste, I'll just copy paste this guy here, which is how we calculated the BMIs, right? So obviously this will have to happen after the loops and before we display the lists. So that was my bit for calculating BMI, okay? So I don't need to print the BMI till the very end. He wants me to print it as a list as well. So I'll leave that for now. So what we need to have it do is we need to have a think of how we're going to do this. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make a third list, BMI list, okay? And I'm going to make it empty as well. So as we're going through here, it's also going to have to calculate the BMI and append it, okay? Now, he asked us to do this as a separate loop. Let's just read the question again. Using a separate loop, a third list called BMI values. Great. So let's get ready and make a third separate loop. Okay, so for I in range choice, because we're going to have to go through how many times they want it. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the heights list, and we're going to say, okay, I want to look at the I value. So it's going to start on 0 and count up till it gets to wherever it's counted to, right? So our heights list will now have, say, a couple of things in it, like down here. So it'll start in the first one. And I want to, you know what? I can actually just say height, because I want to use my previous code. So why not? Height equals height I. Weight equals weight I. And then BMI is going to equal to this calculation with weight and height from before. I'll get rid of this, I'll say from part A. Now, I need to append that to the new list. So I'm going to say BMI list dot append, and I'm going to append, oopsie, append, if I can spell it, the new value that we want to add, which is BMI. Okay, let's just see how we get on with this. We'll try print the whole list and see what happens. It might break. Maybe I've done something wrong. Sure, that's life. That's part of the journey. So BMI values is what I want to type here. So I'm just going to copy paste that. And I'm going to say BMI. Remember, you're printing the list here, not the BMI values. So let's see what happens here. I want to generate 7. Sure, why not? Okay, name. Height is not defined. Okay, so what I'll need to do before this at some point at the start is I'm just going to need to give height and weight a value, right? Height equals 0 and weight equals 0. I also, no, BMI I think I don't need to because I'm defining it down here. So let's try it again. Okay, so back to here. Don't think I've changed anything else. 7 values, please. Int object is not scriptable. Oh, okay. So what's happening here? So, I've got height. Now this is where you can get confused. I've got height and weight, and then I've got heights and weights. So I need to make sure say that height is equal to height's I and weight's I. So now 7 values, and hey presto, looking good. You can always plug these back into your original in your part A just to show. So 182 and 84. So if I run this guy again, 182, 84. Wrong way around. 84, 182. I get 25.4, and in here I got 25.4. So it looks like it's working. I'd say now, actually, just going through, I'm going to try to delete these two just to check for my own sanity. Yeah, it's going to work fine. I didn't need to have height and weight. The problem it was having earlier is that height, it was trying to look for another thing called height. So I actually am defining height and weight here, so I don't need to give it a 0 value earlier. But no harm if you did, it doesn't change anything. Okay, so just taking a look. That looks like, oh, there we go. There's the end of section B. So let's have a final look at section C. So we're taking a look at the sample paper from 2019 computer science. So here he's given us a list of BMI values, 12 of them. And he's asked us to display the number of obese values in the list for BMIs where it's greater than or equal to 30. So in here, I'm going to say, okay, I need some sort of counter. So I'm going to have a counter for BMIs, and I'm going to set it to 0. I'm going to say if X in BMI values, so X being it goes to the first one, okay, and then it's going to go through the whole list, 24, then 19, then 33. So I'm going to say if X is greater than or equal to 30, then we're going to do the obese count is going to increase by 1. And finally, obese spelled wrong there. And finally, we're going to do a print statement to put it all together. So I'm going to print saying obese count. So this will go through the list. If any of those values are above 30, it will print, or it'll add them to the obese counter. Save your file, la 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 la. And then, oh, I need a little colon there. There we go. Obese count, Where is it saying my obese? It's giving out about this part of my code. Oh, look, I put the comma in the wrong place. Working too fast. X is not defined. What you mean? 4x, not if, Steve. 4x in BMI values. Hey! So loads of little mistakes, but it's always good to make mistakes. Cool. So that is looking at the end of part 1. Let's take a look at part 2. Okay, so part 2 says determine, display the largest and second largest values in the list. And he actually says note that the list contains values that are repeated. So he doesn't want to, there's 2 35s looking at this list. There's 35 and 35. So clearly he wants us to identify the second largest there one after. So what I'm going to do first with this is I'm going to take my list and I'm going to, let's call that part 1. This is going to be part 2. So what I'm going to do with this list is I'm going to sort it. So I'm going to say BMI values dot sort and open bracket, close bracket. And that's going to sort my list. Now, to print the largest, that's actually not too bad because the largest will always be the end of the list if it's sorted. So I'm going to say print the largest, oopsie, and largest. But I need to tell it what this largest is. So I'm going to say largest equals BMI values. And I'm going to tell it with to pick the last value in the list, so -1. So let's just run that. And hey presto, we've got the largest working. So now let's take a look at finding the second largest. So now finding the second largest would be should be as simple as, you know, second largest equals BMI values, and then I go -2. But as I discussed already, the -2 value is going to also be 35, which is no good to me. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of an idea. And I'm going to say, okay, let y, or let x, equal -2. So now the second value I'm going to say is x, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it to do a check. So I'm going to say, while the second largest is equal to the largest, so if they're the same, then what I want it to do is I want it to go down 1. So I'm going to say x will now become x minus 1. So it was on -2, which was the second last. Now it's going to go to -3. And then I'm going to reassign the second largest value to be the x value. And now it should keep going until it gets to a value that's not the same, and then replace it. So if I go to print this one, print second largest, comma, and then I'm going to go second largest. Let's just run that. There, hey presto, we have it made. So what did I do there again, just to reiterate? I sorted the list. I printed the largest one, which is the end of the list. I then set x to be -2, and I set the second largest to be that value. But I got it to check and compare it to the largest. If they were the same number, then it replaced x, it went down one more value to -3, and then it would go and check it again. And in this case, they aren't the same, so then second largest is now that new assigned value. And that's it for part 2. Okay, part 3 is a bit of a tricky one. So he wants us to create a function, find nth largest, and he gives us how to do it. So I'm actually just going to copy paste that straight away. So first thing we tend to do, now this is a third part, so I'm just going to continue it on from here. Mostly we should put definitions at the start or functions at the start, but here we are. And he says it should take in 2 parameters, n and list of values. So if I type in 3, for example, it should find the third largest value of the list, which is 32. So that's how we're going to test it in a minute. But I'm going to just take this line, because I might need it later, and put it there as well. So there it is, the end, but I'm not going to use it. But it does give me a strong hint. I need to get the user to input a number, and then I'm going to check the BMI values list. So I'm going to say choice equals, I'm going to say do an int input for the user and enter the following. Now I typed this earlier just to save on you reading, but please enter the first, second, third, i.e. the largest value you'd like to find. And I'm going to say, I'm going to create an answer. I'm going to say answer is find the nth largest. So I'm running the function and putting in choice with BMI values. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm saying answer is going to be whatever, answer is going to be running this function, and whatever the function spits out or whatever it returns, that's going to be now answer. Okay, so choice is picking, do you want first, second, third, last, whatever. And now choice is going to go here for my number. So that's the, if they pick the third last, it would be the number 3. And what that does is it goes up to my function, and all the choice is now become n is now choice, same thing. So now let's make the function. So in tackling this, I just took a while to think about it, and I said, look, okay, I've got my BMI values, right? But the problem is they're not sorted. So I'm just going to copy this. They're not sorted, which, well, it doesn't really matter, but it's when I go through this list, I've got duplicates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new list. I'm going to call it new list because I'm lazy. And I'm going to say the new list is an empty list. And now what I'm going to do is for x in BMI values. So for each value in BMI values, so for 24, for 19, for 33, and so on, I'm going to say if x is not in new list, then I want to add it to new list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for all these values, it's going to check 24 first. It's going to see, okay, is that a new list? Is it in my new list thing here? And it's going to go no. So what it's going to do is going to go, okay, cool, I'm going to add that to the list. So there we go. Now 24 is in the list, right? But I need to tell it to add that. So I'm going to say new list dot append that x value. Then it'll go to the next one. It'll go to 19 and say, is that in the list? Nope. So it'll add 19. And it'll continue this until it gets to a duplicate. So I'll just show here. Take all these values for demo. Now when it gets to 33, it'll go, no, wait. For 33 is in the new list, so it doesn't append. So then the next one we get is 35 is in the list, 23 and 32, I think, are the last two to go in then, because the rest are then repeats, right? So my new list, you can see, is now looking like this. Now, we're not going to print the new list, but that's just what's going to be happening there. So the last thing we need to do then is we need to look at sorting this list and then returning a value from the function. Okay, so returning our, we need to sort our new list. So I'm going to go new list dot sort. Now this new list that I have up here is going to be sorted. Okay, and then what I want to do is I want to return whatever value they asked for. So if whatever they put in for choice, right? If they said 3, then n has now become 3. So I'm going to return the new list value of n, but not n, because that would be like if it was 3, that would return, for example, this one, because it goes 0, 1, 2, 3. I wanted to return the third last, so I'm going to say minus n. I'm also going to get rid of these two lists here because they're not supposed to be there. Not that they'd make a bit of a difference, so I'm going to get rid of them there. I don't need this here print, but I do need some sort of print thing at the end, so I'm going to say print the choice largest was, and then I'm going to say answer. So if they pick the third largest was, and then it should give the answer. Obviously, I can't get third and second and fourth, but we don't care about that. Please enter the first, second, third largest you'd like to find. I'm going to say the third, and hey presto, it was 32. I'll run it again. The fifth, hey presto, it's 24. I'll run it again. The first, hey presto, it was 35. Okay. And that's a kind of run through of the entire Part C section of the Question 16C sample paper. Difficult, challenging function question there, but once you get your teeth into it, you realize it was a nested loop of a loop within a loop. The easiest way I'd see to do it is to say, make a new list and fill it with just single values so there's no repeats. All right, best of luck with your Leaving Cert.